The Pac-12 media deal might actually be right around the corner because they're finally punching back.
Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with our beloved Conference of Champions. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Remember all the radio silence I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks here on the show? Now, we still have that from our beloved commissioner, George K., who many of you hate, but such is the way of life. It's like being a politician. You could actually be likable to the people who need to like you, but there's still going to be a lot of people who don't like you just by way of you being in the position that you're in. Just kind of comes with the territory, So we haven't heard from him. We haven't heard from the Pac-12 office. But all of a sudden, a couple days ago, we started to see some messages of the Pac-12, rather than just sitting in the corner, a la skinny Steve Rogers in Captain America, and just taking some jabs, taking some haymakers, right? They finally went in, injected themselves with a little bit of magical serum, and suddenly they were able to swing back. I don't know what changed, but that's kind of why I buy the talk about the Pac-12 media deal is in its final stages. It's coming soon. It's around the corner next week or two. I believe that because this is a sudden, dramatic shift in tone, right? All we had before this week was a statement of unity from the 10 presidents and a tweet from Mark Harlan, the athletic director at Utah. That's it. Everything else about the four corner schools are going to the Big 12. And Oregon and Washington are going to the Big Ten, and the conference is going to dissolve, and it's on the it's the Titanic, and it's this and that. They were just kind of letting the PR hits keep rolling. They weren't firing back. So the question I would ask you, if you don't think the media deal is coming soon, and look, I mean, on some level, I feel you, man. I feel you. I didn't think we'd be talking about this in March, especially not the latter portion of the month, but here we are. But why would all of a sudden there be a somewhat unified media push from every one of the four corner schools except Colorado? Why would it happen right now if they didn't actually think? Now, maybe something changes and the deal gets held back. Don't know. But why would they all be doing it right now? And if you don't know what has been said in the last, 48 hours or so, I'll give you a quick rundown here. Arizona President Robert Robbins, which, by the way, if he isn't related to the guy who founded Baskin-Robbins, I'm going to be supremely disappointed. But Robert Robbins, I think the only other Robbins that I know of is anyone who's, played Robin on TV, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, of course, in the Dark Knight trilogy, and then Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, I guess. Okay, I'm done with that now. We can move on. So he did an in-depth interview, and if you haven't checked it out, you should, because he had a lot of interesting comments in there. Here were the ones that I found the most intriguing. He said, quote, "I think Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, is a heck of a salesman, and Endeavor is a good PR firm." We'll talk about them in a sec. "And they're working it, and the media are buying what they're selling." Now, he is not the first person to mention a company known as Endeavor, which is a PR firm that has basically been referred to by President Robbins or John Canzano, who covers Oregon and Oregon State and the Pac-12 writ large for his own site now, formerly of the Oregonian. But longtime reporter with a lot of contacts in a number of different places. The name Endeavor has been thrown around more than a few times because it is understood that they were hired by the Big 12. I don't know specifically who, but basically to go online and put a bunch of misinformation out there and run a public PR campaign to try and tank the Pac-12 or at the very least hurt its reputation. That is what he is referring to right there. And frankly, from where I'm sitting, I hadn't heard of Endeavor previously, but that would make a lot of sense given what has been happening in the online space for the last couple of months. While the Pac-12 has just kind of stood by and let it happen, they've been pushing that sort of stuff, and I don't find it to be outlandish at all. Another quote that President Robbins had in there, and I will get to the other side of this because there definitely was, for any Arizona or Big 12 people who are holding out hope that the Wildcats will one day end up in the Big 12. He said, quote, and this is something that I said a long time ago and received a whole bunch of pushback for. Why would you move for a couple $1 million a year or more? Just going to let that one hang out there for a little bit longer. Just a little bit. Okay. Now, he did, when asked a question directly about going to the Big 12, leave the door ever so subtly and slightly cracked open. Because basically what he said is, I want to see what the media deal is and then make a determination. But the mindset for Arizona right now is that they don't want to go to the Pac-12 or to the Big 12, which is weird because I've been told for, I don't know, a couple months, just about every day on the show, that they're going to go, that they want to go, and they don't want to be in the Pac anymore. And here's the president of the university saying, yeah, that's ridiculous. Why would we go over there even for a couple $1 million more? President Robbins also expects the media deal to be done in the next couple weeks and said that it will be, quote, better than the Big 12, and said until then, it's all speculation and people fear-mongering, which goes back to the Endeavor thing, right? And the PR firm pushing all this sort of stuff. Now, he did not completely shut the door, but I think he's making it very clear that he wants to be in the Pac, and that there have been, I have lost track of the number of people who have suggested, well, if the Pac-12 is X amount, under the Big 12, then they're just going to go to the Big 12 and take the money. He is literally telling you, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. And he didn't have to come out and say any of this, and he could have said this at any point in time. Now, I think he might be running some, coach, president, AD, whatever, GM speak on, I'm confident the deal will be better in the Big 12. Hey, that would be great. That'd be awesome for the Pac-12. I think if that were such a solid thing and a done deal, we would have heard about the media deal by now. But if they want to pull a rabbit out of the hat, that's fine. But basically, if the Pac-12 comes in and they get $27 million a year per school, and the Big 12's at 31.6. President Robbins is literally telling you, why would we do that? It is this much of of his operating budget as president of the University of Arizona. He's not going to go over there for a few million more. It's not going to happen. Now, if the Pac-12 somehow can only get like $15 million or something, then we can have a conversation. But if they're within 5-6 million or so, I think that mindset holds true for him. He's not the only person who's been speaking. And it has been pronounced, it has been direct, it has been targeted at all the attacks that have been levied against the Pac-12 for the last couple of months. And you got to hear those other quotes, just like you got to hear about FanDuel, because the tournament is heating up. There are, we'll call it 1.5 Pac-12 teams remaining, which I'll get to later in the show. And now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. You can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, threes drain, everything. And you can do a same-game parlay for a bigger payout. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All those comments, and it was a much longer interview from President Robbins that he gave, and he was not the only guy who's been speaking out lately. Arizona State President Michael Crow, who I've talked about here on the show before, indicated recently, I think I talked about his comments in greater detail on Thursday's episode, that the Pac-12 media deal is in its final stages. He's saying that around the same time that the Arizona president, whether you think they're coordinating or not, seems to be a pretty solid indicator. And then there's Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan, who had the best tweet in all of this when Dennis Dodd tweeted out, the Big 12 is ready to pounce on the four corner schools if the Pac-12 ends up collapsing. And he just said, give me a break on Twitter. Like he just had enough of it. And he went on with KSL Sports Zone, and he did an interview on there as well, in which he was very direct and to the point. And he said, quote, "We've been clear all along. We are 10. We are together. It's a complicated deal because of expectations and outside forces." I think he's referring to an Endeavor in the PR campaign here. "People start chipping away. We've always had a plan after the difficult loss of the LA schools." He also said that Dennis Dodd, who I understand to be a pretty reputable college football reporter, and I think was the guy who first broke the LA schools to the Big Ten story, said that Dennis Dodd had an article with things that he saw as, quote, not true. That is specifically going after, he did not refer to Dennis Dodd in the abstract, right? I'm not speculating that he's referring to him there. He went right after him. He went right after one of the guys he was interviewing and said all this stuff gets thrown around and it's media fodder and it's misinformation. And I heard, one of you guys repeat it on this very show, and Dennis Dodd had things in his article that were not true. He just came out and said all this stuff. This all took place from a media standpoint in like a 36-hour window. And that's why I'm optimistic that the Pac-12 media deal is actually in its final stages here, because this is such a radical shift. Now, the Pac-12 front office and George Kliavkoff, they haven't changed their approach, but we have just seen very sparse, spread out comments about the Pac-12 from Pac-12 people. They have allowed, and we will see whether they are one day looked upon as brilliant or not as brilliant, with this strategy of letting everybody else determine the narrative, whether it's the Big 12, whether it's, Endeavor and whatever they've been doing. I don't know all that entails. Yes, I did just hit my hand on my desk and I am fine. Like Jackie Chan said in Rush Hour 3, Jackie, always okay. So I think that the sudden shift from more than one person, right? I mean, we heard the Oregon State and Washington State presidents go on the record previously. But as I talked about, those are two schools with a vested interest in the league being as strong as possible, being perceived as strong as possible, and not falling apart, right? Because they have the most to lose, because their home would probably be the Mountain West before it could be a Power 5 conference. Not that it's impossible, but that's kind of how it seems. But then Arizona and Arizona State, who everyone's been telling me for months here on YouTube, and I'm sure will still be telling me in this show, that they're going to go to the Big 12. That's all I've been hearing. And that, Utah and Colorado are actually going to do that. Now, Colorado has been silent here, which I do find to be notable. Because if you're talking about the potential of, what were referred to as the four corner schools, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, going to the Big 12, and you've got three of the four, to me, I think it's reasonable to speculate that Colorado's interest of going back could be higher at least than the other school. Like, why are they now? Their athletic director in the past has been on the record saying we're not going back to the Big 12, but those remarks were, I think, months ago, and he could very easily come out and say, yeah, well, information changed, times change, all that sort of stuff. But Utah is making it clear that they are not interested in going to the Big 12. Arizona State's president has said, we're confident in the deal we're going to get, and we want to stay in the Pac-12. And Arizona's president, this is the most notable and most recent comments that have been worth addressing on today's show before we get to some basketball chatter. And that's that he does not want to go to the Big 12. He left the door open if he feels like he could get forced there. And of course, the Big 12 would take him. And by the way, Big 12, you can have them. Arizona basketball, bunch of bums. I'm sorry, Arizona fans. I know there's some of you who listen, but yikes, what was that? We'll get to that in a moment. But he's saying they want to stay in the Pac because, as has always been the case, and as I've been saying for months here on the show, this is about more than just athletics, which are a big piece of the puzzle. There's no doubt about it. And it's probably dependent upon each president and how much he or she cares about athletics compared to academics. But you cannot ignore the other side of it because a president is not an athletic director. Those are two different people. An athletic director may be able to bend the ear of the university president, but he is not influencing that decision. It is not happening like that. And Arizona would be academically downgrading by going to the Big 12, which amongst Power 5 schools that have moved has historically never happened. Doesn't mean it couldn't. Schools had never left the Pac before. Schools had only been joining the Pac. The LA schools changed that, right? Traditions, I guess, are meant to be broken. Rules are meant to be broken. Laws are meant to be broken. You know, that sort of mindset, mumbo jumbo and such. But he's made it very clear, President Robbins has. He does not want to go to the Big 12. All right, that's enough media rights talk today. Let's get to the basketball front. So I said earlier that 1.5 Pac-12 schools are in the Sweet 16, which, by the way, is very true. Because UCLA is only half of a Pac-12 school. Spencer, what are you saying? This podcast is this close. I mean, it's this close to becoming a San Diego State podcast. Just ditch the Pac-12 label, just put up the San Diego State label. The Aztecs getting to the Sweet 16, but they had to play Furman. Yeah, welcome to March, man. What do you want him to do? Play somebody else? Not like Virginia was that good anyway. So, good for the Aztecs. And this is why it's so big for the Pac-12 reputationally and on the hardwood to add San Diego State. Because who's the other team that's advanced here? UCLA. They look really good. I actually picked them to get to the national championship game and lose to Alabama in my bracket. I feel kind of good about that right now. I don't feel good about the rest of my bracket because it stinks. But those two teams, you never know. You could salvage. You pick the national championship game in the winter, you can make up a lot of points that you lost in the first and second rounds. But anyway, UCLA has been the best basketball school in the Pac-12 for the last several years. And they're the best team this year. They're going to lose a couple players, so they might not be the best team next year, but they'll still be among them, right? This is why adding part of why I'm so excited at the prospect of adding San Diego State. Because I love basketball. I love college basketball. I wish Pac-12 college basketball was better. Instead, Jared Hass and Mike Hopkins are going to get another year. I don't know why. But, well, I know why. I wish they arrived at a different conclusion so those programs could go in a more positive direction. But we'll see. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if one of them popped next year. But when you're losing UCLA, right, USC is the bigger loss in football, and UCLA is the bigger loss in basketball. And they're kind of comparable in that sense, right? Like USC at its peak has been top of the football conference, and they've been consistently quite good. Though, you know, they've had some down moments, but consistently, they've been quite good. Not the only good team, but quite good. UCLA basketball has consistently been quite good. When they went to the Final Four, remember, they were an 11 seed, so they were having a so-so, just okay kind of year. But when you're losing those two, you got to think about who can replace UCLA most readily, or at least get you some of that back in the basketball sense, and who can do that with USC on the other side. I have thoughts on both, just like I have thoughts on how you need to go get your Built Bars. And the Built Bar March Madness bracket is actually here. Yeah. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's the time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for the Mint Brownie. That's my go-to forever and always. The Mint Brownie bar going all the way through, just like I hope UCLA goes all the way through. When you go on there and you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built and have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. Run. Don't walk, run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. So I think when you talk about the schools that I hope the Pac-12 adds, San Diego State and SMU. I think SMU has, though don't sleep on San Diego State's football, right? I mean, in 2021, they beat Utah. They had a 12-win season, ended in the top 25. I would love for them to be that consistently. They probably won't be 12-win, but like if they can just poke their head around in the top 25 consistently, yeah, that's going to help the conference tremendously. I do kind of feel, well, I could see San Diego State or SMU, frankly, you know, kind of replacing or filling that void a little bit. And again, we're talking down the line, not as much immediately. But when you're talking San Diego State basketball, yeah, they kind of fill that void immediately. And them going to the Sweet 16, I'm all about it, man. I'm all about it. So UCLA, half a Pac-12 school. I mean, they are a Pac-12, but San Diego State right now, go Aztecs. Now on a personal note in the bracket, I got to pull for Bama to try and win my bracket pool. But that's kind of like a win-win. It's like if Bama stays alive, all right, my champion's still in it. If San Diego State wins, hey, we got a Pac-12 team in the Elite Eight. But pulling for both of them, of course. But the tournament. Oh, the tournament. Arizona. What are we doing? What? You know what? Go to the Big 12. Go. You're in timeout. I don't care if Princeton got to the Sweet 16. You went scoreless over the last, 3.5, 4 minutes of the game? What are we doing? What are we doing? I put some last-second faith in Arizona to get to the Elite Eight. I originally had them losing to Creighton. Instead, I picked them to beat Creighton. Yeah. Don't know what I was thinking. I mean, boy, that was a bummer. I didn't think Arizona could win the national championship. I didn't think they could get to the Final Four. But they shouldn't have lost in the first round, and that's just, yikes. Not a good look. Not a good look for what is now going to be the biggest Pac-12 brand once UCLA leaves, right? I think basketball-wise, your biggest brands are going to be Arizona number 1, probably Oregon number 2, San Diego State number 3, Arizona State number 4. Man, Pac-12 hoops, we got to figure it out collectively. We gotta figure it out. Rest of the results in the tournament for the current Pac schools. USC, they're Big Ten schools, as far as I'm concerned. I thought they'd beat Michigan State. I really did, and they were just not as good in that particular game. And Andy Enfield's taken them to an Elite Eight, but I feel like more than once he's left Trojan fans wanting a bit more. But on the plus side, you were in the tournament this year, so at least there's that. But I don't think that's the standard that's set at USC. UCLA looks good. Arizona State, net positive for Arizona State, by the way. I mean, yeah, you should have beaten TCU. That was tough to watch. That didn't feel great. That would have been a really, really nice win for the conference to get them into the round of 32. And they were up. They had like a 13-point lead with 11 minutes to go or so, and TCU just chipped away, won late. But great season for Arizona State. You win a first 4 game. You play a competitive first-round tournament game. You get 20 wins. You showed that you belonged, right, after people had questions about you getting into the tournament. So good for Arizona State basketball. And I'm pretty sure Bobby Hurley's in a contract year. We're going to talk to Richie about that next week sometime on the show. But I tell you what, I love seeing San Diego State in the Sweet 16. I just love the idea. The city of San Diego, that's where Anchorman is based, by the way, is a tremendous place. And the thought for me of having it in the Pac-12 just gets more alluring by the day, right? Not just because their men's basketball team is in the Sweet 16 for the first time in, I think, 9 years was the stat that I saw on Twitter, or that they're one of just, they're the only future Pac school that's going to be in the Sweet 16 next weekend. Yeah, they got some stuff to figure out there in the Pac-12 hoops department, which has been an ongoing theme, unfortunately, here on the show, because they just haven't been able to figure it out. I don't know if it's a standards thing, coaching, luck, injuries, bounce of ball. I don't know, but there was a point in time where Colorado was looking really good earlier this year. Nope. Utah, nope. Like, they just haven't been able to figure it out collectively as the mountain schools. You add San Diego State and you replace, not all, right? I think San Diego State's ceiling, well, at least in the Mountain West, in the Pac, you have to imagine it changes. The ceiling is lower than UCLA, but you make them a Power 5 program, that changes the calculus. And by the way, the investment, the buy-in that I see, the attendance at their games, the energy, the support from their fans, I love it. Like I said, I don't know if San Diego State fans are going to find a bigger fan of the Aztecs going forward in all their sports on any Pac-12 podcast than this one right here. Appreciate all of you listening out there. I will see you next time, which will be tomorrow. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.